Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Raymond Peterson.
I'm their guest and friend, Alan Singer.
So we have Dr. Alan Singer and our educator historian with us again. And our special guest is artist extraordinaire and educator, art educator himself, Dr. Lorenzo Pace. And Dr. Pace is with us because there's an upcoming anniversary of one of his major works. And while we're going to ask him about that and get him to discuss it, I'm going to roll a little video here that gives us a sense of some of what he has done. So I hit share screen. I'll try to get the right video up. I hit that. And while it says share, I'll see if we can get the video to start properly. And that 1 minute mini essay basically was letting folks see some of Dr. Lorenzo Pace's work at the Europa Gallery with an exhibit that just opened October 6th, was it, Lorenzo?
Yeah.
And it's going to run through November 6th, if my memory serves correctly. But Triumph of the Human Spirit, that massive sculpture that we saw in the video and that was fronting that flyer, and the celebration of Triumph of the Human Spirit is going to be on Sunday, October 23rd, correct, Lorenzo?
Yep.
From what, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., something to that effect. And the gallery exhibit is going on now, leading up to that celebration. The celebration is going to take place right at that, what is it, 50-foot, 300-ton sculpture of yours that basically addresses some of the issues that we've been talking about on Media Watch for any number of shows, which is, how do we teach American history in this country? Who are the Americans that need to be represented? And 22 years ago, I believe it was, when that Triumph of the Human Spirit sculpture was dedicated, Lorenzo, it was all about, tell us, please, what was the connection to the Native Americans that you put into the sculpture and the Africans?
Yes, this is a multi-level of rendition of what I thought was very important for our country as American, because the whole aspect of Ellis Island is only a few blocks away. The Wall Street is only a few blocks away. The World Trade is just a few blocks away, and it's one of the most iconic sites of the burial ground probably in the world.
The African burial ground that was discovered in 1991, right?
Yeah, and so that whole thing, it was a very controversial aspect of me doing it, because at the time, the Pox person, Stern, gave me pure hell in terms of what they wanted on that site, and I first had chains and fists and things of that nature. They said, "Oh no, we can't let you put that in that most sacred spot." they said, go back and do something else. And so I did. And I came back with another aspect of what they thought the area should be represented, because you got the courthouse, you got the Chinese, you got all the mayor's office only half a block away. So I said, what do y'all want? We don't know what we want, but we know it when we see it. I said, what? I mean, smoke was coming out of my ears at that time, you know. But I went back, I said, this is the represent my ancestors, not these cats who making these big decisions of what should go there.
Yeah.
So I went to the Metropolitan Museum, and I went to the Ocean African section. And I said, hey, ancestors, what do I do, and what do that's acceptable in that spot? And so I kept coming across the Chihuahua, and that's kind of represented in Mali, Bamako, West Africa, and a number of African countries acknowledge that Chihuahua. And the Chihuahua is an antelope that sits on a base that tells the story of our beginnings here in this country. That's again to all people in this country, and that's what I wanted to celebrate. So I brought the model back. I went to my studio. Okay, let me do something like what, because my work is mostly abstract, and I said, let me get something that I know they won't give me hell on. So I went back and designed Triumph of the Human Spirit. I brought it back in. They said, hey, this is what we want.
And the Native American influence as part of that vessel. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, because in that area was fishing wild games. The Native American used to do all their fishing and all their hunting in that area.
The Collect Pond is actually where that sculpture is sitting. That pond was where the natives were doing a lot of their early industrial tanning, fishing, you name it, right?
Exactly. So that's why I wanted to say something about them, because they're the first people here in this country. Then I wanted to say something about our ancestors being drugged from Africa to the Americas.
Yep.
And then I wanted to say something about all immigrants. El Salvador is only a few blocks away. All immigrants, the only ones here that's really is the Native American. You know, this is their land. And so I wanted to incorporate all those kinds of elements into the sculpture.
Right.
And so the Chihuahua, the two horns you see of the big ones, then you see the small little two horns behind the big two horns, which represents the baby. And I got inspired to do this based on the female Chihuahua. There's two versions. There's the female version and that's the male version. So I was inspired by the female version because why? Because she brings the next generation to the table.
Right.
So that's a quick gist of, you know, and also Jalani, Giuliani wanted to unveil the monument on Columbus Day. And I said, what? You know, the monument was wrapped up almost a year completely because we couldn't get a date that was conducive for everybody.
Right.
And so he said, well, I'm going to do it anyway. And he unveiled the monument on Columbus Day, unwrapped it. No black people came to the unveiling. All city officials, black, you know, white, you know, all came to see Jalani on unveiling the monument. Then I rewrapped it and had our celebration the following week. That's when all Amir Morocco, I just go on and on. All the people came to celebrate that event.
Yeah, yeah. We that little glimpse of Amir Baraka, that was one of the anniversary celebrations. He was down there reading one of his poems. Yes. I mean, it was a quick snippet. We barely saw him, but I felt we needed to put his presence talking about the ancestral strength of what that monument stood for. And so that's why he was in there.
One of the things that I really appreciate about what you did, Lorenzo, is many people don't realize that, but Foley Square, that collect was the site in 1741 where 35 enslaved Africans were executed, accused of plotting to want to be free. So that is a very, very powerful site. And the idea that you labeled it the triumph of human spirit, because that's really what that trial was about. People were executed because they wanted that human spirit. So it's just a very, very powerful image and a very, very powerful location. And that's why I think it's so important.
The executions that took place after the 1712 revolt was right next door, same location. And so that whole Foley Square Collect Pond area, that's the main reason why the African burial ground is where it is because Little Africa was right there, adjacent to where the burial ground is, all the way over towards where Borough Manhattan Community College now sits, going all the way up through Prince Street and further north. That was all Little Africa. And so you were right to make sure Triumph of the Human Spirit was going to reflect who those early Africans were that started that burial ground. That little snippet of music that I put underneath your images, you got to tell us some of those images that we saw about the gallery opening, because you need to tell folks that that spirit of repurposing that African ancestral image is still going on in your artwork today. So tell us a little bit about what we saw in those images.
Oh, so you rolled those images? The audience was able to see those images?
Well, tell us what that video were, because that's what you guys sent me, and I put it in that video. That looked like some of the images that were in the gallery.
Yes.
From the opening of the Europa Gallery. Those were some of your pieces in that video, correct?
Correct. And I can give a little snippet on some of the images that you saw. One was the church, the cross. The title of it is no, not The Fire Next Time, but James Baldwin. He was a preacher in Harlem.
Go Tell It on a Mountain, maybe?
Go Tell It on a Mountain.
There we go.
So that church and that door, which I got from Harlem, because my work is always about finding things and putting them together. And then you go on to the other piece that was a part of that whole little thing was the I wish you had brought those things so I can see those. Exactly
we can roll the video back again at the back end if you want.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
No, so because I had so much stuff in there, and this exhibition is concurring with the unveiling of the 22nd anniversary. So then after we do the celebration at the monument, it's only 15 minutes walk from the site, because it's Chinese Chinatown. And that whole piece that I did on the big lights and all that kind of stuff, you see that, the sun. I did that piece in 2000.
That circular piece that looked almost like a spider web.
Exactly. I when I went to, I was invited to China for the Olympics. They invited about 45 heads of states from Africa to the Olympics, and that thing was one world, one dream. And so
The Beijing Olympics back in 2008 or something like that.
2008, right? And I said, well, why did China invite all these heads of state, all expense paid? And I said, wow, because my mama has all the natural resources. Africa has everybody needs and wants. And so,
Lorenzo, where is the gallery, and how long will the exhibit be there?
125 Division Street. It's right in Chinatown, and so it'll be there until November 6th.
Yeah, I think it's 112 Division Street, I think. But it's in that 100 block.
125.
I think it's 125, yeah? Okay.
125 Division Street.
Till November 6th. That's good.
Yeah, November 6th. And then after the celebration on the 23rd of this month, we all leaving the monument and going to the gallery. So if you don't get a chance to see the aspect of the show, you can see it after the celebration at the monument.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's cool. So Raymond, I remember we were talking about what we were doing on the Book Banings stuff and the retelling of history. You were mentioning Lorenzo's book, Jalani and the Lock, earlier. What's the significance for our ongoing coverage of a book like Jalani and the Lock? Because Lorenzo, the story of Jalani and the Lock, quickly, real quick, I know you wrote it for kids, but tell our viewing audience.
It's the foundation of our history, basically. A little boy taken from Africa, brought to the Americas in locks and chains, Abraham Lincoln freeing us, this enslaved, and Johnny just kept fighting to get his freedom, and he did, and finally got, and Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. And so that's the gist of the whole aspect, and we are never to forget from where we all come from.
Bingo. And so, Raymond, we go back to this whole bit about Texas banning the teachings of you can't talk about race and racism and history of slavery. Update how Jalani and the Lock fits in.
Well, he's disseminating information that needs to be told. You know, we did a lot of talk about banning of books on the last show, but the importance of books and the importance of this Dr. Pace's artwork is to educate our children. And I wanted to point out, I didn't mention this in the last show, but there's a children's librarian in the Llano, Texas library who said that she hadn't read books on children with suicidal tendencies when she was a teenager, but she would not be alive today. So preserving the written word, exhibiting thoughts and ideas through the artwork is essential. Dr. Pace, I saw an interview with you with the University of Illinois that actually was directed by a good friend of ours, whose name I can't remember at the moment, even though I know him, Melvin McRae, where you had mentioned that your father had wanted you to be a minister. And you said, I can't quote you exactly, but you said something to the effect that you feel that you followed in your father's wishes through your artwork. You know, you're ministering to people through your artwork. And that's a very important thing to do. And you know, along with the books that people are trying to ban, they're trying to ban arts, music, anything that doesn't subscribe to the current code. I think what you're doing is wonderful. I commend it. It's necessary. And I wish more people were doing it. There are a lot of people doing it. It's just not being exposed. Media is not covering this for, I don't know if they're obvious reasons, but you know, we're just not getting this information. I wouldn't have known about your show if I hadn't been contacted by Eric. I mean, I probably would have discovered it in the events of the 20th anniversary, but there's no coverage out there. We need artists like you. We need writers like you as well. I don't want to get off the subject, but I want the interesting thing about Jalani and the lock. Could you tell us about that lock?
Oh,
It's in your possession.
right. And 1991, my pop in Birmingham, that's where I'm from. I go back to bury my pop, and around the dinner table, we were discussing my father and my uncle, who was like in his late 80s. You know, he said all of a sudden he goes to my mother and said, "Hey, do you have a bag in the house that he had given my father over some 30 years ago?" My mother knew exactly what he talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Went in the bedroom, brought this paper bag, My uncle went in the paper bag and pulled this lock out. He said, "This is the lock that enslaved our uncle, Stephen Pace. All the food stopped. All everybody was like, what?" My mother didn't know the history of the lock. Nobody in the family knew the history of the lock. So they bestowed the lock on me. And I was like, what y'all giving to me for? I mean, what am I going to do with this lock?
So back it up. We're talking about the fact that his great uncle, your great grandfather or great grand uncle,
exactly,
was an enslaved young boy on one of those Middle Passage slave ships, and that's the lock that was part of the lock and chain that had kept him enslaved on the ship coming over.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And so it really, I mean, it's really a challenging piece, man, because, and at the very base of the monument, I made sure I made a replica of the lock and put it in the base of the monument to make sure to connect my family with the enslaved population here.
So triumph of the human spirit sitting big and bold on Foley Square, also in its base has a replica of the lock that enslaved one of your ancestors.
Yes, yes.
Can't be a better tribute to your ancestors than that on triumphing over adversity.
Exactly. Exactly.
What I love about the book is one of the questions that teachers always raise is how do we introduce these things to younger children? So this is a picture book which can be read with preschool kids, early elementary kids. The colors that you have in your art are so vibrant that it really captures the attention of kids, and it helps to hold them to the story of how Jalani gets to be free. But he always remembers, because of that lock, that he had been enslaved, and he wants his descendants to know that we have freedom, but this is our story. And I guess that was, I thought, was the message of the book.
Exactly, exactly. And it's the other aspect of this, we don't like to talk about our history because our history is very painful, very, very, like in my family, we never brought the subject up. Nothing about slavery, nothing about what we've gone through here in this country, because we was basically ashamed, you know.
So for me, that makes the significance of Triumph of the Human Spirit just so much more powerful, in that from the family history of not talking about that past trauma, you turn that on its head and created this monumental 50-foot tall soaring black granite monument to the triumph of those early Native Americans, those Africans that were captured and enslaved, those other immigrants that came in and populated that same downtown area that you definitely want to capture in your ongoing artwork. So Lorenzo, I don't know, we got maybe what, another 3 minutes?
About 3 minutes,
three and a half, yeah.
Yeah, sum up for us what the anniversary of Triumph of the Human Spirit means in this particular time in America when they're trying to not tell American history properly. Tell us why you should be doing what you're doing, why marking the anniversary is significant for all people in this country.
Exactly, and that's the Achilles heel. All people don't feel connected because everybody come from my mama, every human race. And how do you teach that to children? I approach it from a performance aspect. I get my flute and get my conga drums. Then I tell, it goes back to my father's church. It's the call and response. I get the kids involved with the story. They have to say everything I say. You have to say it after me. And if I clap my hand, you have to clap your hand. So I get them engaged. And that's the best way they all be engaged in it. And that's what I've been doing that for the last 20 years around the country. You know, I did it in Beijing. I did it in Texas, Alabama. I mean, that's something that really get them engaged until hopefully that will be impactful for the rest of their lives.
Fantastic. Look, I am definitely going to join you down on the 23rd
Because you will be speaking.
I appreciate that invite. You understand that burial ground connects us. Because of that burial ground, we got connected. That burial ground connected Alan and I because he wrote that curriculum, edited that curriculum, New York and Slavery. So I reached out and he reached back. We've been connected ever since. Raymond worked on Then I'll Be Free to Travel from the very beginning. And so we connected to Lena Horne because of that burial ground. And at the end of the documentary, she says, oh, well, one of my ancestors were with the Massachusetts 54th. That's how the documentary part 1 wraps up. The Massachusetts 54th on the charge of Fort Wagner. And I said to her when she said that, see, you were supposed to do this because we're all connected. It's all organic. So yeah, that burial ground, those ancestors were speaking to us when they were speaking to us. And so that's why we're all here together. And I thank you for joining us. I think we're about out of time. And so this has been Media Watch. I'm Eric Tait.
Thank you, Eric.
And I'm Alan Singer. And Lorenzo, thank you very much. This was terrific.
Thank you again, Dr. Pace. Thank you.
I hope to see all you all down at the monument. And
Thanks, Director. My good buddy, Dr. Lorenzo Pace has been our special guest, and we'll catch you the next time, folks.
Peace.